This video is about how to use and how to customize workflows. Workflows are supporting the automation of processes in IT and business. An important area for this is the service catalog. Here we are using workflows for approving orders as well as for providing the ordered services. Let's see this from the perspective of a user. We open the self-service portal. Therein we find the catalog offering services. Let's take a look for the service Team Dolphin. Here we are. Using this service, users can apply for membership in the project Dolphin. Upon approval of that service, they have access rights for certain file shares, for some directories in SharePoint, and access to a project mailbox. Thus, they have everything they need for working as a member in this project. The technical implementation makes use of membership in groups in Microsoft Active Directory. Upon approval, the requester of the service is added to a group named Team Dolphin in Active Directory. Members of that group have all aforementioned rights and permissions. Next step, we will order this service in the role of Vincent Valentine. But beforehand, let's check for that group to ensure that Vincent is not member of that group. We go to the Active Directory. We are looking for the Team Dolphin. Here it is. We open it. We look for the members. And we find only two, Frank Fryer, Stephen Simpson. So Vincent Valentine is not a member of that group. Of course, a usual user doesn't have access to this view in Active Directory. This just is here done for illustrating the process. Now we will order that service. We add it to our cart. We again see the service. We see that the service is running against our account, vValentine. We add it to the cart. And now we order it. The recipient information is okay. Our cost center, delivery to the recipient, so ourselves. Recipient information, Vincent Valentine in New York. That's fine. Place order. We get a confirmation with a summary, the order ID, our name as requester, the delivery information, and we will see that two workflows are running consecutively. Even if users don't know the term workflow, they can see that something is going on for them. Vincent can see 5 states for his order. And using this little square, I enlarge this view. The 5 states are ordered, because the order is placed. The approval, which is pending, someone has to approve that order. The provisioning, and then the acceptance by Vincent Valentine. And if everything is done, the order is fulfilled. That's what we want to do. If we reload that view, we get another information. You see it with this little eye in the circle. If I click it, I see that the approval is pending at Lucas Linden. Lucas Linden in his role as functional service owner. So in order to drive things forward, we need to log on as Lucas Linden. We take his role. Let's do that. Now we are Lucas Linden. And Lucas has an entry in his service portal, which is called Decide. Obvious what it does. because now he gets information about all decisions that he can do. So we find the order Team Dolphin, which is pending. Lucas clicks it. Lucas sees that Vincent Valentine has requested it. That's fine for him. And he wants to decide on this order. He again gets information, Team Dolphin, no coast, so that's okay. He's fine with that. And he's approving that booking. So back to the role of Vincent. If Vincent is now reloading his view, he sees that his order is not only approved, and now the information is it is approved by Lucas Linden, but that the order is also already provisioned and that the order is waiting for his acceptance. That's fine. Let's see whether it worked. So we look again in the Active Directory, in the group Team Dolphin, and indeed we find Vincent Valentine as a member of that group. Of course, in real life, Vincent Valentine would have checked access to file shares, access to SharePoint, access to the project mailbox, etc. Now that we have seen the process, let's go to the heart of the thing. Let's get to the workflow for approval. If you want to find out which workflow is used for the approval of some service, I go to the service catalog. Let's do that in the role of the administrator, Viktor Vogel. Now I am Viktor Vogel. I go to the application service catalog. Now I'm going to the service portfolio. Here I find all services. I'm looking for the service for Team Dolphin. And I make a double click in order to get into the dialog of that service. You see several tabs with many informations on that service. For our purpose, we are looking on the first one, General. We see the name, Team Dolphin. We see the service type. It's about access rights. We see the status of that service. It is operational. Further informations relevant for our purpose is the approval workflow, which we are finding below. The approval workflow is called one-step approval, and then one-step approval by the technical service owner. And the technical service owner of that service is Lucas Linden. I think you will understand that each service can have its own technical owner. So I can use this approval workflow for many services, provided that the approval should be done by the technical owner of that service. So the approval workflow is kind of generic. Now let's take a look at this workflow in the Visual Workflow Studio. I open another tab by duplicating that one. And now I'm going to the application administration, which, if you want, is a machine room of the Matrix 42 solution. In the navigation bar, we find the item Services and Processes. We click it, and below we find the Workflow Studio. Here we go. And again, we see some tabs on the top. We see Workflow Studio, which brings us where we are currently. We see Manage Workflows, where we see a list of all workflows existing in that system, and it's 187 workflows that come out of the box with the solution. And we see workflow instances. What is the difference between a workflow and a workflow instance? It is more or less the same as the difference between a cooking recipe and a meal. The recipe is always the same, but the meal that you are cooking using that recipe is every time different. Same for the workflows. The workflow is always the same, but if it is running on concrete data that appear maybe only once in the lifetime of that workflow. And the instance may have individual results, of course. What we want is completed, but a workflow may be halted or it may even fail for some reason. And you can check it here. So the tabbed workflow instance is very useful when you are creating your own workflows and if you want to see how they are running. Now let's take a look at the workflow one-step approval technical service owner, which we have found in the service catalog as the approval workflow for Project Dolphin. We find it here, and in order to see it in the Visual Workflow Studio, there are two ways. We can do a single click here and here use the button Edit in Studio, or alternatively we can reach the Workflow Studio using the tab Workflow Studio and the Quick Start button Workflow Studio. Let's use that way. And now the Workflow Studio is starting. Here we are. In the File menu, we choose Open. And now we see the list of existing workflow, which is ordered alphabetically. We find the one-step approval by the technical service owner here right at the top. We click it, we open it, and we see that it's quite an easy workflow. Let's enlarge this a little bit. After the start, there's only one activity. These little boxes, and there can be more than one box, like in a flowchart, these little boxes are called activity, and here plays the music for everything that is related to our workflow. To see the property of that activity, we click it, and on the right the property pane opens, and we see several entries. On the top we find the service booking ID. What is the service booking ID? You may imagine that for each order we have one unique data record with one unique number. If we know that unique number, we can find the record and all data related to that booking. For instance, who placed the order, the requester, and we can find which service has been ordered, etc. Below, among the properties, we see the decision makers. Decision makers are of course crucial for approval. We need to know who is entitled to make the decision. We click it and we see a line related SVC service booking class base .service.technical owner. If you are not too deep into the data structures of Matrix 42, don't get frightened, it is as easy as that. The SVC service booking class base is a class base containing all service bookings. It's exactly what I've been telling before. It's a list of all records on bookings, containing every information of each booking. Now we are dealing, as we already have the right booking ID, just with our order, and using the concept of object-oriented data, we see that from our order we take the service. This is the service that has been ordered, and from the service we are taking the technical owner. It's as easy as that. We have our order, we ask for the service that has been ordered, and then we take the technical owner of that service, and this technical owner is the decision maker. Well, that's exactly what we wanted. This is what a one-step approval workflow where the technical service owner is the approver should do. We find also a line for the portal progress. This means that we are taking care for updating our view in the service portal. You remember upon approval there was a line that Lucas Linden, the functional service owner, has approved it. Here is where we manage that entry that is visible in the service portal. Now we are ready to build our own workflow. Let's assume that we want to change our approval process. Not the technical service owner shall be asked for project membership, but rather the superior of the requester. And right so, before someone is becoming a member of some project, usually his or her boss should be asked. So let's close this one and go back to the file menu and click New. For building some new workflow, it is mostly the best and easiest way to use some template. Let's choose one-step approval cost center manager. This is that one. As the superior is usually responsible for the requester's cost center, this should fit. Let's click Create in the right pane. And let's change the name. Approval for Team Dolphin. That's fine. We save it. And we already see that this workflow is looking quite similar to the workflow we previously had. Now we have a cost center approver. We again find the service booking ID. If you didn't find yourself comfortable with that mysterious service booking ID, you see you don't have to care for it. Using the template, everything's already fine. You see a display name. This is what is shown within the box for the activity. You see a decision maker, and you remember that's an interesting point. And we see in the SVC service booking class space, you remember the list of all bookings, we are changing to the cost center and to the administrator of the cost center. That's exactly what a approval workflow for the cost center responsible should do. It should select the administrator of the cost center in question. And here within this workflow we even find the delegators, because if you have one single person who is responsible for that cost center, you have a problem if this person is not available. So we also have the delegators. And again we find the portal process. So everything is done. We didn't have to choose anything. It's fine, and you see the advantages of using those templates because in many cases they come out of the box as you need them. Now it's always the same sequence, and it's important to remember this. Save. It's clear what saving does. Then validate. Validating a workflow means a formal check for that workflow. It ensures that we didn't forget something. Maybe if we had forgotten to define some decision maker, now we would have got an error. But everything is fine. We get the green message. Has been validated successfully. That's great. Now, since we have a formally correct workflow, let's check it in. And checking in means that this workflow is now protected against accidental changes. You can't change it now anymore. If you want to do some changes in the properties, you need to check it out first. But this is not what we want to do. We want to release it now. To release means that we are pushing this version of the workflow to the real life of Matrix 42 UUX, and this workflow is now available. And you see that there's an automatic versioning. As this is the first version of that workflow, the version number is 1.0. Release. So please remember that sequence: save, validate, check in, release. Okay, That's fine. Now let's go back to UX. We are going to the application service catalog. And now we are using our workflow Team Dolphin. Let's start it from scratch. Team Dolphin, open it. Now we go to the field for the approval workflow. We delete the original one and we enter our own workflow. As you know, some letters are enough and we get as a proposal the matching workflow. Approval for Team Dolphin. This is what we just have created. Save and close. Now let's test whether it works. As Vincent is already a member of that project, we need a new user. Let's go for Mariah Miller. Here we are. In her role, we order the article Team Dolphin in the service portal, and you know the way. Press catalog. Our service is among services. And here we have the Team Dolphin. We add it to the cart. We see our own Active Directory account, which is fine. Add to cart. We see the recipient informations, Marketing America, because Mariah Miller is located in New York. Place order. We see the delivery information again and the progress of the whole order. We enlarge again our view. We reload it in order to know who will approve it. Now comes the moment. Will it be Lucas Linden as before or someone else? Yes, it's someone else. It's not the technical service owner, it's a cost center decision maker. And it can be Frank Fisher or Frank Fryer. That's it. That is exactly what we wanted. Not Lucas Linden in its role of technical service owner, but the cost center decision maker. Let's go for Frank Fryer in order to approve this order. Here we are now in the role of Frank Fryer. We are again in the self-service portal. We again click decide as Lucas Linden did. Again we see an order for Team Dolphin, which is now 172. Remember maybe that with the first order it was 171. We click it. We see that Mariah Miller requested to be a member of the Project Dolphin. We want to decide. And from our point of view, it is okay that Mariah Miller is becoming a member of the team. So we approve that booking. Let's go back to the view of Mariah Miller. So we reload the view of Mariah Miller. And we see that the order has already been provisioned. Let's check it again in the Active Directory. Team Dolphin, double click, members, and here we find Mariah Miller as we expected it to be. So you have seen how you can configure your own workflows for approval. We changed a technical service responsible by some cost center responsible in order to implement another company process. Workflows do not only have an important role for orders from the service catalog. They also occur for changes and for compliance rules. Changes are relevant within the IT service management. Matrix 42 is supporting your changes by providing workflows. The workflow ensures the adherence to your predefined processes, and it reduces your workflow by partial automation of the process. Let's go to the service desk and define a new change. Here we are on the service desk and we find change request here. Let's click it. We want to add a change and we enter some name, which is now our name, which is Victor Vogel. And we add a name for our summary. It's a monitoring change. Please lower the limit for usage alert of the log file system of application X from 90% to 80%. A usual change of some monitoring limit for observing some file system, and we want to treat this as a standard change. The category is service text changes, that's fine. We could refine those category. It's not our subject today. But our subject is a change template. This is really important. There are several change templates, and I will show them to you as they are predefined. For instance, you find emergency change. You find non-standard change. You find release management processes as well as service provisioning changes. But what we are looking for is a standard change, the default template for that. And you also see that with each change template, we have a workflow which is linked to this template. In case of our standard change, it's a change management workflow which is called default standard change. Let's click it. In order to finalize the change, it is good to have some text in the description of the change. The summary is just a single line, as you would use in an email as header. In the description you have more space to fill. And we need to fill a service time profile. The service time profile is about deciding whether a change will be running 24/7 or only 12/5. This is important for the service level agreements which are linked to that change. Now we have everything, we save and close it, but we will look for the workflow managing that standard change. So again, we go to the Workflow Studio. We close our approval for Team Dolphin. It has already been saved, it is checked out, which is fine, so closing doesn't matter. We are going to the File menu, and we will open a workflow, and it's a change workflow. You can select from this long list, which can be rather be a long job, but you also can search and refine. Typing change in this little box gives us the change workflows. We find an assign ID group, assign asset, default emergency change, default non-standard change, default standard change. This is what we want. Click, open, and you see at once that this workflow is a little bit more complex than our approval workflows. We even have a decision at the end of it. So let's take a look. This workflow starts by gathering data. This is a usual pattern with workflows, as it is mostly about having everything available when needed. Here, with this get single record activity, we find things like the description that we entered, the big box to enter our description of the change. We find the subject of the change. We find the ID of the change. And we find the change initiator. Useful information that we will use afterwards. The next activity is already about creating a task for implementation. It's called Create Implementation Task. What's going on there? We find the description, we click on it, and we see a task will be generated, and the description of the task is looking exactly as it is, as you find it here. The following change has been requested, and now the change description from our change description in the UUX is entered here as a variable. Then please implement it. Close this task with reason solved after successful implementation of change. If implementation is not possible for any reason, close this task with reason about it. That's fine. However, if you want to change this text, this is exactly the place to go for. We need something more. We also have a responsible role, and this standard change should be done by the administration. And we find a summary for the change, and again the summary of the change will be given as summary for the task. Now that the task for implementation has been created, it means that the change is in a new state. So we need to do the housekeeping and update the change's status. This is what happens in the next activity, which is called update change. And here we will write in our change ticket that the task has been given and that it has been sent out, which is a new status. Now we again need some update in the portal, such that the new status is visible in the portal for everybody who is entitled to see that. So we have updated our change, we have taken care for showing it in the portal in the correct way. Now we need to wait. Why do we need to wait? Well, we have created a task, but we don't know at all when this task will be started and when it will be ended. So in order to proceed within our change workflow, we need to wait. And for this, we have this smart activity wait for activity. And in order to let the system know what are we waiting for, we are handing over a task ID. How do we know that task ID? Well, this task ID was the output of the activity create implementation task. Here we find the task ID in the variable implementation task ID, and here in the wait activity we make use of it. The next activity is called get implementation task data. Now we want to know the outcome of that task. Was it solved successfully? Wasn't it solved successfully? This is what we are getting here. We will exploit the dataset, the class space for such task in order to know. And then we make a decision. If the task has been solved successfully, we update the change and we announce, yes, it's closed, it's done, great, and we complete it in the end. And if the decision is that the task has not been solved, then we start the rollback for the change. It's as easy as that. Nice example for a workflow that is clearly more complex than a one-step approval and already makes use of a decision. You see how powerful this tool of defining workflows may be to improve your automation. A third area for workflows are compliance rules. Compliance rules may be regarded as keepers. They observe states in the system and they are initiating actions if some predefined condition is met. This means that compliance rules are working similar to a monitoring system with just one monitoring item. Let's go for an example. Close our Workflow Studio. We go to Administration, which we already have here. We go to services and processes, and below we find compliance rules. We look for the compliance rule with the name monitor computer status. Here it is. We click it once. What does this compliance rule do? The compliance rule is observing computers. This is a monitoring item that is conserving. It's not a single one, in fact, it is all computers. And the condition for this compliance rule to be triggered is that the status of some computer is unknown. So every time when you have a computer whose status is unknown, you get a compliance rule who is taking some action. And which action is taken? You see it among the subsequent activities where we have start workflow. This is what the compliance rule does. It defines which objects to observe, computers in our case, which is the condition after which I should start some activity. It's always when a computer has a status unknown, and then I'm starting a workflow. Let's look at it a little more detailed. We click Edit for this. Again, we see the name of the compliance rule. We see the configuration item, which is computer, which is observed. And now the condition. Condition is we have a change of an object. We have the change of a computer. And the change is that the value after the change is unknown. So we have a computer whose state is not unknown, and then it turns to unknown for some reason, and then this compliance rule is triggered. Here we have the choice how it should be worked. Process each compliant rule event for each object, even if there are many computers that are unknown at the same time. You can process only the last compliant rule event, which makes not too much sense for a computer getting to the state unknown, but you could process the compliance rule event for the respective objects conjointly if you have several computers getting unknown at the same time. Processing time is immediately, and the action is starting a workflow. Let's take a look at this. And among the workflow details, we find the workflow is called monitor computer status with compliance rule. And you guess, now we will go to the Workflow Studio and look at this workflow. Let's close our standard change workflow. Let's go to the File menu and let's have a look for Monitor. Here we are, and we open it. The first activity in that workflow is a for each activity. You remember that we had in the compliance rule the possibility to say that even if there are several objects for which the compliance rule is triggered at some time, we can just run the workflow once. And in this case, the for each activity helps us that this workflow is running in parallel for all objects for which it is relevant. Let's open this for each. What happens in this for each? We have some ping. Okay, what happens in the ping? And you see workflows may have nested activity with several layers. You see the layers here on the top. Here's the workflow itself. We only had the for each, and in the for each we found the ping, and if we open the ping we get this one, which is the last layer for this workflow. At first we are assigning the current object ID, which is important. If we have several objects which are triggering that workflow, we need to handle them one by one, and at first we need the current object ID. We get the data of the object in question, and we are interested in the computer name in particular. And then we ping it, and ping is here an activity that is running a script. So in workflows you may even start scripts, and here it's quite short. You see the entire script here. Which happens is that we are testing the connection to the computer with our computer name. That's it. So we are testing whether we can reach that computer. And with the result we go to the decision. If the result of the test is okay, then we end the workflow, nothing to be done. And if the computer is not reachable, again we are defining a task, create task. We have a description. Please check off the status of computer, and again we are using the variable name computer name. It cannot be reached. And the task is given to IT Asset Management because it's up to them to find out what's going on with their assets. Now you have seen 3 areas where workflows come into play. The first thing have been orders from the service catalog. Here we looked at some workflow for approval and we replaced it. The second area was the change management. Here workflows are ensuring the adherence of your predefined processes, and they are supporting your work by automatically creating tasks. And finally we have seen a workflow in the context of compliance rule. For further information, I may refer to the help site of Matrix42. You find it as help.matrix42.com. Go to the section Digital Workspace Platform, go to the Workflow Studio, click it, and here you will find many informations on workflow in detail, the file menu explained in detail, the workflow editor explained in detail, the delivered activity such as create task or wait for activity or the decision. You'll find it here with all explanations. You also find some tracking mode. Tracking mode allows you to debug your workflows if you are writing them on your own. You can check them step by step. And some more chapters in order to make yourself comfortable with workflows and to unfold their power for your IT work.